Well, hello. Welcome back to Trading Weekly, which is turning into Trading Monthly, which I think we've mentioned a couple of times. How are you feeling, Kay?
I'm feeling amazing. Well, it's so good to be back. It's been almost 4 weeks now, right, man? It's been crazy.
I think it's been 5 weeks. Yeah,
Five
because we've
weeks.
just been a bit busy people through summers. Off on holidays, watching the football, taking care of our families, that kind of stuff. So it's just been one of those summers. It's been brilliant, actually, to be fair. And but yeah, like you, I'm very, very happy to be back.
Yeah, it's been like the funny part is that because this is such a big part of our life, on our daily life, actually, the trading and investing and
Yeah.
doing even though we do this content once a week, it still just feels like when you don't do it, it's like something is missing.
So
So
let's get it out of the way. Obviously, your World Cup finals tonight. By the time you're watching this at some point, you probably know the results. Who knows? I'm Team Spain, of course. My wife is Spanish, and Kay is Team Argentina. So we
yeah.
might not be in next week either. But yeah, are you looking forward to the match, Kay? I'm sure lots of other people are.
I'm sorry, what?
Are you looking forward to the match tonight?
Oh, dude, I can once we finish this, I'm gonna go and watch the pregame. And honestly, I mean, I think I personally have been following Messi for such a long time that even though I'm not a big football fan, I have followed Messi for many, many years now. So I think for me personally, I feel like because this is going to be his last game, no matter who wins, I just want the game to be an epic in terms of being the last game for him, at least
I
the
think
World
that's
Cup.
fair comments. Yeah, I think that's fair comments. I just don't want Argentina to win because obviously what happened to England the other day.
Yeah.
But again, it's England's fault. We're not going to get into that. That's a different podcast. But for today, obviously, we're going to be looking at trading content as we do. Make sure you put your stop ticker requests in the comments down below, as you can see along the bottom of the screen there. And of course, we're just a couple of guys looking at charts, giving our perspectives. And yeah, it's not financial advice as always. And of course, massive thank you to Wolf as well for that's the platform. You can see the little logo there on the top left-hand corner, Wolf Financial on X, a real hub of all kind of trading information. So yeah, go check them out. It'd be really good for you, essentially. But let's jump into the slideshow, okay, shall we?
Let's do this.
Awesome. So on today's ticker, we've obviously got, hang on, let me get rid of that on the bottom there. There we go. Today's we've obviously got a market overview as always, fear of good index, earnings previews, bi-weekly chart, and the yearly performance, and obviously our picks of the week. This week I've got Netflix just after the earnings report midweek, and you've got ServiceNow, which is just ahead of the earnings report next week. So if you're looking at any of those stocks, then do stick around to see our thoughts on those. And of course, after those picks of the week, we've got your audience requests, which of course make sure you stick in the comments as you are watching. Of course, we're on a couple of hours earlier today, so we may not get as many viewers today. But of course, I keep saying of course, but if you come back in the post recording, then we can do it again next week, and you can see your charts there and then. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Market overview. Do you want to talk over to the market overview this week? Because I've been a bit off the markets recently.
Yeah, no worries. So this is not a weekly one. I used a monthly one because we actually were
Oh,
not.
cool.
Yeah, so we were not here for months. So if you look at the monthly market, one of the things that really surprises me is actually Apple. Apple up 11% almost, and actually Apple was up a lot last week. I haven't been following Apple's news cycle, so I'm not sure why it was up. But again, it's up. I'm happy. Everybody who owns should be happy. I think the bigger issue is on the semiconductor chip side, AI stocks. I think they have gotten a lot of beating. The neo clouds like Iron and CoreWeave, they are being thrashed basically left, right, and center, including others one as well. I think the on the SaaS side, things have been relatively on and off kind of a thing. Like we saw ServiceNow running up to 109, 108, and then coming down again to 100, 203. So this cycle continues. Same thing happened with Tesla also. And I think there were a couple of news elements that came out last week. I think one was specific to the AI sector, where there's a company called Moonshot AI in China, and their latest model, Kimi, whatever the version is actually on the benchmark, the best tool, the best LLM, better than your Fable 5, which is Anthropic's model, and OpenAI's ChatGPT 5.6, was released very recently. So there's a lot of buzz and talks about it. But overall, I still think that the market is a little bit overblown, because regardless of whether it's Kimi or whatever model it is, it's not like AI is dead. We have seen this cycle play out last year with DeepSeek. So something similar. Apart from that, there are other broader concerns which I think people are not talking much. It's still the inflation still persists, and I think that is a key. And then instead of thinking of rate cuts, I think we might see even rate increase this year. So that's the overall thoughts about the last couple of weeks.
So it's been an eventful month as always. Then, okay, that's good to
Yeah,
hear. Yeah, so big numbers on there, but obviously there's a few numbers on there, names that are on there that are a bit flat as well. So you've got Nvidia, Microsoft, and Amazon pretty flat in the last month, which is interesting. I'm sure we'll dive into some charts a bit later on. It'd be good to see some charts. I've not looked at many in the last 3-4 weeks. The World Cup has just consumed me. It's just how it is over here in the UK. But yeah, we'll move on to the next slide then. And we've got the fear and greed index. You mentioned before we jumped on the live stream here, 1 month ago, we were pretty much sitting at the same level at 32, as you can see on the
exactly.
right side here, and
Yeah,
we're sat at 37. So the market really hasn't quite moved in the last month or so. And you can see on the left side there, these are the weekly numbers, I believe. So SPY down 1.2% and QQQ down 2.6% as a result of that AI news. Key events this week, Kaye, is it just jobless claims?
so I think that the biggest event is the earnings, because this is going to be one of the big
Yeah.
weeks for the earnings, as earnings kicked off last week. So that is of course going to be the center stage. But apart from jobless claims, I mean, there are other events that, I mean, I think covering US Iran war is like, it's like a whack-a-mole situation, like one day on, next day off. So I don't even bother writing it over there. And of course there are other events as well happening all around, but I think jobless claim would be probably a good one. The job market has been stable, even though you still hear a lot of layoffs and this and that, but I think the numbers still are decent. Inflation is the key point, I feel like.
Yeah, you mentioned earnings there, and I think that's a nice segue to kind of go into the next slide here. Earnings for next week, we're kind of kicking off. We had the banks, I think, last week or week before, from
Last week.
what I remember.
Yeah.
Last week, okay, so that kind of kicks off the season. Netflix tends to kick off the season as well. We had them last week, and obviously this week we've got two bigger names. We've got Tesla and Apple,
Mm.
not Apple, Alphabet. Sorry. Yeah, there's a few other names here as well, which I quite like the look of. Obviously, Intel, interesting to see what they've done, especially with their run up recently. American Express on Friday before the market open. And the big one there as well for you actually is ServiceNow. Do you want to talk about that quickly, or
Yeah,
save that
absolutely.
till
So
later?
ServiceNow is going to be a big one, and I think we'll touch upon ServiceNow more in detail later when we do the charts. I think a couple other folks that would want to know. I think IBM. IBM got like shellacked last week. They were down like 10-12% after, I don't know what the CEO comments. Texas Instruments is going to be another one, because also this is also an AI play. You have Intel, another AI play, and you have Nokia. Nokia has become the latest retail favorite. So a lot of eyes on Nokia. I think if you go on X and you search Nokia ticker, people are buying Nokia left and center, and people were talking about, hey, the price targets are $22, this and that, and there's a lot of folks talking on about Nokia. So I think there's going to be a lot of buzz around Nokia, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and that's before the market open on Thursday, so do keep an eye on that. Especially if you've got any trades on the ticker on Wednesday, kind of going into the closes, be careful to make sure you know you've got those trades on, which I'm hoping you do as a viewer of this show. Okay, not much more to add to the earnings, but yeah, two big names, obviously Tesla and Alphabet on Wednesday after the market closed. I've been looking at those closely, I think, for sure. Okay, so first chart of the day, we've got SPY Weekly as always, and so, I mean, about 5 weeks ago, wasn't it, when we were last here? So we were probably just about there. So we actually haven't really moved. The week following our last stream, a big drop, and then obviously the weeks after that, kind of regaining a bit of composure. I think what's important though, we've kind of stayed above this trend line that we've had drawn on here for quite well, maybe about 6 months now, actually, for the best part of the whole year. So we've kind of come back down. We've retested it twice within these kind of two candles. You can see the top right-hand corner here where my cursor is. We've just kind of bounced off it nicely. So I just still think we can make a move towards 800 up until the midterms, which I think is November. Is that right, Kay?
Yeah, November,
Yeah.
first week
So
of November.
up until then, so I think we could just kind of slowly grind up towards then. There's no reason why we wouldn't do that. On the contrary to that, I think if we do break down this trend line and perhaps we come down to the bottom of this trend line here, kind of flowing up through the bottom here, which would be around about 680 to 690, thereabouts, maybe 700, depending on what the time is on that. But yeah, I mean, there's two kind of different scenarios there. Of course, you could say it goes up or down. That's kind of basically what I've just said. But it's just kind of how you kind of look at that and how it moves, I think is important to kind of bring to the table. Any thoughts on this chart, Kay, or any thoughts on the SPY in general?
No, I think you covered it pretty well on this one. I think it's more of a wait and watch. I think the only thing I can add is generally the summer season is slow. So July is like we are well into the summer season. So I mean, there is sentiment that there we will see probably some sort of a pullback in August. Um, Again, nobody can predict it, but generally because if it's a slow season, you don't see much movement, and you can just chop throughout the season until the third quarter actually kicks in.
Yeah, I think we said in previous years, it's no, from a human psychology point of view, there's no harm in people taking profits and going on holiday, shall we say.
Mm.
Very basic kind of view of that, but essentially that's probably what the kind of low volume season means, is people have kind of gone away, not necessarily spending their profits, but just going away generally with their families, kids are off, that kind of thing. So that's why there'll be slightly less volume, perhaps maybe slightly, dare I say, better price action, like easier to trade, at least intraday. Would be quite interesting to see if that happens. But with Donald Trump around, you just never really know how the day's going to plan out. And it's been really, really interesting this year. We spoke about before the stream again, before we went live today, about how kind of volatile the markets have been in the last couple of years. And don't get me wrong, we've had good days, we've had really bad days, but luckily for me so far, touch wood, it's been pretty green in the last couple of years. So yeah, we're navigating it well. Are you navigating the market well in the last couple of years since he's been?
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
you
But
have been. Yeah.
but with this administration in particular, I think because it's very heavily news driven, um, it can change on a dime. So I'll give you an example. So a couple of weeks back, this was when we were still doing the live before we took a 4 week break. One week they said Donald Trump said, "Hey, we are going to announce taking stake in some AI companies," and a lot of buzz was around, "Hey, it might CoreWeave might be the company that they will announce." Well, nothing came out, right? Nothing was announced, so that kind of died down that event. But again, who says and who stops? An announcement coming down the road in 2 weeks or 3 weeks that hey, we are taking stake in this company and that company, and suddenly because now, with the stock price getting suppressed, especially with the Kimi news that that came out, you got to prop up the market, right? The only way to prop up the market is for the government to give out a statement. Sounds ridiculous, but that's the only way to
Yeah.
prop the market.
It feels sometimes like the price action is almost waiting for those announcements.
Yeah,
Whereas
you get
before it kind of make those moves beforehand, but now it's kind of waiting for those
exact.
moves.
You get like it's like a drug addiction, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
got hooked to it. So now you're basically waiting for the government to say, "Hey, Donald Trump to say, hey, we're going to do this," and then you're like, "Oh yeah, we are back," and you're running the show again. So self fulfilling prophecy, I think.
yeah. All fun and games, I guess. Okay, let's move on to the next slide then. That's obviously the weekly chart the SPY covered. Past performance, we've got in the last show I picked SoFi. That's admittedly it was about a month ago, and Kaye picked Rivian. These are both picks that we pick for the future, kind of next 6 months to 2 years, essentially, maybe even more than that. In the case of Rivian, but you can see I narrowly won somehow. Of course, it's just a bit of friendly competition, and now I've won 6 weeks in a row, or six tickers in a row, maybe not weeks. Yeah, but again, obviously, it's all a bit of fun and games, and it's just an idea of when people watch this, you can see what kind of tickers we bring up on a regular basis, as you can see on the left side of the screen there. Moving on to the right side of the screen, you can get me on X and YouTube. I'm going to be sparking up the YouTube again next couple of months. Had a bit of time off recently, so I've just kind of let it chill for now, get the kind of creative juices naturally come back rather than just force stuff out. But yeah, that's kind of me. That's where you can find me at Shaun Trades _. Where can we find you, Kay?
Yeah, you can find me on Substack and YouTube and X. But interestingly, like I actually have begun writing consistently on Substack now.
Yeah.
So and then I also have plans for the YouTube channel to get back into the content making. Been making, spending a lot of time on I took this 4 weeks off the opportunity to actually build a plan on how I'm going to come back on the YouTube. So more to come on that. I think I'll probably target August as to come back on YouTube. But if you want to know what's going on in the latest one, definitely subscribe to the Substack channel. It's I publish an article every Sunday. I think it's 9 a.m. scheduled. So every week you will get to see what's going on. And currently, I'm writing an article series on AI, AI, different stacks of AI. So and the reason is because I don't know everything. So you are hearing my research directly as I try to understand this stack. And I'm not going to pretend that I know everything, right? Nobody knows it. If somebody's pretending and they don't know what they're talking about. I know certain segments of this AI stack. Some segments I have zero idea. So that's my research, and that's what I'm publishing on Substack. So yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see those notifications come through on Sunday mornings for me on a regular basis now. So it's good to have you back. And of course, he did mention the plans that he's got for YouTube to me before the stream, and they sound pretty exciting. So do go ahead and stick on at InvestK on the YouTube as well. If you haven't already, of course, which I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably already have. Moving on, then I've got my pick of the week, which is Netflix. They reported earnings last week. And I've got a bit of a trade idea, as you can see on the screen there, with the kind of trade layout, I don't know if you can call it trade layout, but that's what I'm going to call it.
Mhm.
But of course, I asked Colin, which is my way of saying ChatGPT, on the left side of the screen there, the key takeaways for investors
Mhm.
from the latest earnings report. So go ahead and read them on the left. But I think although it's slightly muted and it's slightly flat, I feel like there is still a lot of possibility with Netflix because there's still the streaming giants, there's still the streaming kings, and they've always got to have, not the best shows. It's obviously very subjective, but I feel like their shows are very good, and obviously they will continue to invest in those shows regardless of what they're about or whatever they are. But my point is basically Netflix is not going to go away, and I think this is an interesting opportunity to maybe start a position. Full disclosure, I am in one. I started it on Friday, just before the market close, or about an hour before market close, just a smaller position to get a feel for things. And you can see the entry there is about 67, something like that. It's not the exact point what I've got on the screen there. But very simply, stop loss at 64 and target price at 92, or first target price at 92. And you can see the bottom line there. I'll flame for the screen. I'll mark up the cursor. Previous resistance back in late 2021, and then again in July of 2024, and acted as support in November of 2024. So um, kind of a breakout, should we say, from that particular point, and obviously went up massively since then, and obviously come back down. So I think this is a very important kind of turning point potentially for Netflix. And I'm really interested to see what Kaye says, and perhaps maybe some comments that might flow through a bit later on. But a very simple trade. I think it's just over 4-1, which is over my target. I normally aim for at least 3-1
Mhm.
on any given trade. And of course, market dependence, obviously where things are. If it comes to 84 and the market takes a turn, and I might just take the position there, of course, you have to be on top of these positions. You have to kind of be aware of where the stocks might head to, given a certain news event that might come through, especially in today's market, which we've covered quite comprehensively in this live stream already. But yeah, that's my trade I think, for Netflix. I don't think they're going to go away. I don't think it was the worst earnings report in the world. What are your thoughts here, Kay?
So there are two. So apart from the chart that is listed, there are two things that are specific to Netflix. One is generally the second quarter uh, has been relatively weaker for Netflix when they report earnings. I mean, if you go back and look at all the earnings of a couple of years, last couple of years, you will see generally this quarter and the next quarter is generally kind of sort of weak. And there's a reason behind it also, right? Because generally during the warmer months, folks are not staying at home. Also, like they are most out and about. That's as the winter cools down, folks are more home, so they generally binge more content. That's one cyclical thing that happens every year. Second is not to do with the particular chart, but every time if you go and look at the companies when they do a stock split. So what happens is when they announce a stock split, the stock generally runs up a lot. And after the stock split ends, it will may barcode a little bit, chop, and then eventually start to decline. And this happens with pretty much this is cyclical thing that happens with every stock that has a stock split. Look at Apple. After they did a stock split, it takes like 1-2 years for the stock to completely get back onto an uptrend. Now I'm not saying that they won't be in a short uptrend or a run up for some odd reason, But this is generally like a very broad, I'm painting a very broad brush, like this is how the overall works. Now I am in Netflix, it is my one of my long term positions, and I will, no harm in saying, I am actually down on my position because my cost basis is low 90s, I think 92, 91, something like that. And I do have leaps also. So pretty much the entire Netflix position is in red. But the good news is that that is actually my long term position, so I don't really care much about, hey, I need to sell them. And my leaps are all 2028, so there is enough time for it to recover. I also think that at some point in time, buyers will step in, because end of the day, this is a pretty solid business. um I mean, Netflix is just one announcement away, hey, we are building a data center, who knows. And the stock has gone back. But that's a comic relief here. But uh, the, I do think that at this point in time, Netflix has been beaten up a lot. But this is the same story that played out a couple of years back, with Netflix. So
So the stock split that Kaye was talking about there happened around about this sort of area. I can see it on the bottom of my screen, which is actually behind Kaye, so you guys can't see it. But the little symbol was around this sort of area here. So you can see, as Kaye mentioned, after the stock split takes place, a little bit of negative action, had a bit of a pump here. I think that's good earnings. I think I remember. And to be fair to me, about 3 months ago, I did like the stock around this area because we had support here in the back. And I did take a trade, but I got stopped out. But of course, I had tight stop. I didn't keep it running down and losing all this position because my stop loss was somewhere around here, so I didn't lose much money. See what I mean? So you can't. I mean, it's risk management. Everyone knows how to do risk management, but
mm,
just be strict with it. Otherwise, you will kind of hold losers for longer than you want, and that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is to cut the losers straight away and hold the winners as long as possible. It's very
exactly,
very simple.
exactly.
Okay, so that's Netflix. So this is the weekly chart. So we'll move on to Kaye's pick of the week, which is now.
Yeah.
Service now.
Yeah. So first of all, if you're watching it for the first time, what I would recommend is, on my Substack there is an article. There's a thesis for ServiceNow. So what I would recommend is that if you are interested in that, definitely go and read that. It's also on my X profile. You can pretty much, I think I posted it recently sometime, so you can take a look at that. So they're going to report earnings on, I think Wednesday, 22nd, right? I believe, right after the
Yeah,
market
let's see.
close. Generally, their actual move plus minus is about 7.6%. So you're looking at about 7, 8, $8.50 plus minus. So depending upon where we are, you can adjust. Now, I'm not particularly taking any earnings trade at this point in time, because generally for earnings trade, it's a binary situation. So you could see, you will win 50% or you could lose also. Anyway, so what I'm watching particularly for this one is because I have leaps. So the thesis that we have is, last quarter ServiceNow reported earnings, and they introduced that they are building this AI control tower. So what they want is the enterprises to keep ServiceNow, buy ServiceNow, expand into ServiceNow, so that their agents can be controlled by the this one particular tower, right? And they have other features as well apart from their usual SaaS features. So the key is to actually watch how is that AI growth converting what happened in the last quarter, right? Were they able to make inroads? So that is going to give you the first input. Now I'm not going to say if I don't see the growth here, my thesis is completely out of the window, but it will give me a pause for sure, right? So you will have to reconsider and rethink, should we watch another quarter before I decide to cut the losses, right, on ServiceNow. um, Keep in mind that when I proposed this thesis, ServiceNow was trading in the 80s. So I am already up on my position. So I don't mind cutting them if the thesis changes to, at least break even, if not have profit. Again, I don't think that has changed yet. I'm not like negative on ServiceNow, but that needs to be watched. And other point is, this is a weekly chart, so there is a lot of resistance. Now the only way for to break the resistance is to actually see good earnings and the call they're going to make for the rest of the year. And I think that is the key. I'm targeting that gap that we have around the 160, 165, yeah, that gap. You could see that gap better if you look at the daily chart, because this is a weekly, it's kind of a little messed up. But that is what I'm targeting. Um, I'm not expecting it to happen right away, but that is something, for my leap trades. That's the target that for me is the key. Yeah, so that's basically I have. I'm just watching how they whatever they have narrated last quarter. Are they actually delivering on that, or is the story changing? Because you cannot have the story changing every quarter. Because if the story keeps changing every quarter, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I'm watching on service now.
The investors, they want consistency, don't they? Or,
Exactly.
consistent growth, maybe
Yeah.
not consistency, but yeah, it's an interesting chart. I remember this sort of area here just after the last earnings report. People getting really excited, saying, "Oh, it's an obvious bet. It's an obvious trade, obvious investment." And of course, subsequently, it did kind of run up. I think maybe with a little bit of hype, and then it got up to these levels and thought, "Oh, okay, there's some technicals here that they can't really get through." So it obviously got sold off. I'm not sure where the daily moving averages are, but I'm assuming they're kind of flowing in around
Let
where price
me
action is at the moment.
hold on. Let me pick
Um,
it up on my side. So the daily moving averages, I think we are sitting at the 50 and the 20 SMA on the daily, and the 200 and 300 are still above. Like 200 is 128 and 300 is 150. So it's well below those major moving averages.
yeah, so the big ones are right up here with the weekly big ones, which is interesting. Um, but yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the companies obviously they report on Wednesday. So if you get a push up to kind of 140, 150, and then you hold that, that could be a really interesting turning point for the company in general, really, at least from a technical point of view. And like you say, aiming for this gap would be a good start for sure. Until yeah, it's hard to get into it now, but I think the leap side of things that you mentioned are actually really appealing, because if you're looking at this, especially after the earnings report, obviously I wouldn't buy leaps after the earnings report because volatility would be mad. But yeah, looking at leaps options, I think for the next couple of years, I think that could be quite valuable. You could go out of the money. Would you go out of the money with that? Obviously, typically leaps are in the money, but
Well,
if you
well, I mean, if you want the um, a good return on your invested capital, then I would recommend not going too much out of the money.
yeah, exactly.
Because let's say if you buy a $200 leap for 2 years later or 1.5 year later, you will pay very less upfront. But the problem is that your return is much further out, right? So let's say you pay, I don't know, you pay 20. So your effective cost basis becomes 220. So you have to wait until for the stock to come to that range. So that's a lot of run up you're looking for. The reason people buy leap in the money is because they just need that little bit of a trend
Yeah,
change, and then suddenly they become deep in the money. That's the reason why people tend to buy deep in the money leaps, because you start to gain much faster. um, I mean, I'm not against, but I would rather go short dated calls out of the money for, like, that has some sort of an event that's coming out that you're hoping for, that quick swing. Generally leaps too far out of the money, you'll end up losing money. I have
yeah.
This has been my experience personally.
Fair enough. I think going back to the chart then, if we come back down to, say, after earnings, we come back down to 90, maybe 85, I'd really like that area because obviously we've got a bit of support here that's been held and it kind of about 2, 3 months ago of this year. And obviously keep a nice tight stop loss around 75 perhaps. And then you get a good few months of positive price action going up to kind of 150 or so, because obviously the fundamentals have come in nicely, blah, blah, blah. That would be a really good return and an easy kind of 3 to 4 to 1 in my book. So I'm definitely keeping this on the watch list. I wouldn't be buying it right now. I'm going to wait to see what happens after on Wednesday, and then perhaps maybe leave it a few days after the earnings report, let things calm down, which I typically do anyway. But yeah, no, I think it's an interesting pick, Kay, for sure.
Yeah. Because you said something interesting, Sean. If the thesis stays consistent, it shows growth, and we
Yeah,
see a sell off, that gives you another opportunity to get into the stock if you interested in the SaaS play again, because
yeah,
this is also one layer of the AI stack. It's way down in the, it's not the chip, it's not the memory which everybody is right now interested in, or the power and all that stuff, but this is a very real, this is where they make money on AI.
That's a really good point, actually. I think a lot of good investors are like that. So if you've got a chart that's kind of going up consistently in terms of fundamentals, but the fundamentals of the company are going up consistently quarter over quarter, but the chart is up and down, wacky, kind of dropping down 20%, 30%, then perhaps on those dips or on that certain cycle of kind of technical analysis, you can add to that position and really make some good money because the company is doing just fine. A
Exactly.
good example of that is in my opinion, is SoFi. So
Yep.
SoFi in the last 2, 3 years have posted fantastic fundamentals. Nothing amazing, but just very consistent bottom left to top right, which is really, really important for a company. Whereas the stock price has been all over the place. It's gone up to 25, back down to 15, I think now,
Yep. Yep.
which is why it's one of my hottest stocks at the moment because I think it just makes sense. In my head, it just makes sense. Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, we'll move on then to these stock requests. We haven't had that many in today. Understandably, we have been away for 5 weeks, and also we're on 2 hours earlier, so people may not have even got out of bed yet. Who knows?
Yeah, especially on the West Coast because it's pretty early. It's only 8 o'clock in West
True,
Coast.
yeah. So our apologies. We'll be back next week at the normal time. But first of all, we're going to go for Man Ram's picks, which we really, really appreciate you coming back week after week, Man Ram, one of the biggest supporters on this channel. Snowflake, Datadog, and CBRS. CBRS is a new one for me. Is it a new one for UK?
Yeah, yeah. It's a Kerberos Systems. I don't know how to say that name, but
Well said. Yeah.
it's an AI company also. So
Ah,
okay.
just
Anyway,
getting the charts ready. Yeah.
I
And then
mean,
we'll jump into it.
one thing I can tell that Manram, this is one of this stack of Snowflake and Datadog is a regular for him for sure. He definitely is into the SaaS space as well.
So this is the Snowflake Weekly, and I'm going to tell, because it's a bit more of a casual episode, tell you a fun story. And you know this already, Kaye, but for the viewers watching, this has been a really terrible stock for me. I was going to say a much ruder word, but I'm not going to do that. It's a Sunday, and people don't need that. Um, yeah, I had a trade basically on from the bottom of this trend line to break the top of this trend line to go upwards. And as you can see, it kind of did that over time, but it did break down, triggered my stop loss. And then I came back a few weeks later at this sort of area. And to be fair, I did make money. I went from this area, about 150, I think it was, up to this area here. And of course, I did sell that before the earnings. I sold it around about here, I think it was, because I didn't want to take it for earnings. Anything could happen with these software
Exactly,
stocks. But
exactly.
if I just held a little bit through earnings, then of course I'd be up here and I'd still be flying. So there's a message in there somewhere, but that's just how I trade. I
No,
trade with a little bit
I
of safety
I
in my
think
mind.
I
So
think I think you did the right thing
yeah, I thought
because
so
see,
too. Yeah,
everybody is smart after the fact,
yeah,
but you have a rule, right? So when you're trading, you need to follow your rules. There will be chances because again, earning is a binary event. So what if the earning was on the opposite side? Then you would have lost the gains that you made. So yes, you did not,
and more.
right? You did not make the most out of it. And I think people who claim that they are always selling at the top and getting at the bottom, they're outright liars. I'm sorry to say. You may get lucky here and there, but consistently every single trade you're selling at the top and getting out, dude, that's just lying from your teeth. That's and I'm
Yeah,
going to be very, very blunt on this one because it doesn't happen. Like I'll give you, I mean, okay, I sold AMD. Okay. I had like multiple tranches of AMD. I started selling AMD and AMD freaking ran up to 500 something, I still hold couple tranches, but I have sold half of my tranches. I would have made hell lot of more money. But I sold like it went up $50, I sold from my cost basis. It went another $75 up, I sold from my cost basis. So I did make money, but I didn't make $300 on, per stock when it ran up. So
yeah, and I think that's the kind of we've been like this for years on this. We've been very transparent with our kind of thoughts and perspectives on stocks, but also our results as well. I've said many times I've not held my winners,
yeah,
and that's it's a problem of mine. It's just I like to take profits, and I don't let my winners run enough, which I think a lot of traders are like that. I think it's an emotional game, and of course, yeah, we're all humans at the end of the day. But going back to this chart, I mean, coming back, I still made 25% thereabouts. That's the move I made. Obviously, I did lose a bit of money here, but that's let's say 5% max. So overall, I think I made pretty good money on that. Okay, going back to the chart then, we kind of waffled on a bit there.
Mhm.
It's looking pretty good. Obviously, we come back down. We retested this area that I liked before, not completely, but thereabouts.
Are you on the
Obviously,
you're on the weekly, right? Okay,
this is
got
the weekly chart we're on at the moment. Yeah, and we can see we've kind of retested this sort of kind of volume gap, should we say, and making higher highs. I'm guessing obviously the main part now would be to go back above kind of what's that, 283, and kind of into kind of new price action territory. What are your thoughts on Snowflake at the moment? And maybe more of a fundamental side of things. I know you're very much into this stock.
So I think Snowflake is a very very key player in the AI
Mm.
stack, and I think we saw that in the last earnings, right? It really ran up. The issue with Snowflake is that every time there's an earning or some sort of an event, they always end up creating a lot of gaps. And yes, all gaps don't get filled, but most do. And Snowflake is one of the stock that is going to fill the gap. So I think they're going to report earnings on 8/26. So yeah, so that's the gap I'm talking about, and that's a very very big gap. So
It is.
that could be an opportunity because for next earnings coming up on 8/26, which is about what 6 weeks, 5 6 weeks away from, the EPS revision is very high. 31 analysts are saying the stock is gonna be top line and bottom line again. And I do believe that for this whole AI narrative to play, Snowflake plays a very very big role in the enterprise segment. Just like you have ServiceNow, you have Snowflake, you have Datadog, right? They play different roles, but they are major players. So if you are going to be investing and you want to get into it, I would target that gap for an entry, right? Uh, so the moving average is currently, I mean, honestly, for me, if I can get into at 200 SMA or like somewhere in the 180, 190, if it falls, I would probably make a position or for a trade per se before the earnings. There's no guarantee it's going to, again, it's a binary event, but that is where I would target the gap to get in at this point in time. But if it keeps running up, I'm not gonna get in because it will fill the gap at some point in time, and then that will be the entry point because it has held this 108 level for many 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 years. So that has added a very good support level for the stock. Now you may say, well, why are you talking about 108? We are at 268 because the stock does go down drastically when it goes down.
It does. It's moved like this in the past. It's moved like this a lot
Yeah,
in the past. I mean, the move that you're talking about here is quite dramatic, as you say, but it's not out of the realms of possibility because we've got, obviously, as you can see on the screen here, a big volume gap. So as soon as we possibly lose that kind of 220, maybe 215 level,
yeah,
that's when things could get a bit nasty.
yeah,
These are obviously it's a bit of a messy chart on the screen, so I'll go through it. The big pink line going through the screen, and that's the projected earnings. So we've still got a bit of price action going up until then. Estimated date is the 26th of August, which is just over a month away.
yeah.
So yeah, plenty of time for that to kind of move around, see what happens with the news, etc. But yeah, I mean, it will be tricky to break down through these moving averages, but once it does, I think we'll do it quite fast. But on the other hand, of course, we could just break this 283 level and make I don't know if it's all time highs. Is it all time highs for
All,
Snowflake
all,
at that
all time
level?
highs. Yeah, all time
Yeah,
highs.
so a new all time highs for the stock, which was we're in price
Well,
discovery mode at that point.
well, I mean, apart from, I would say the all-time high for the stock was 432 around the IPO time, and
Oh,
IPO
okay.
was back in 2020 because this was a hot stock when it came out. But if you actually go to the weekly, we are still on an uptrend. Like
Oh, definitely, yeah.
so it is making higher highs, and actually on the monthly it will show very clearly we are on the higher high. So weekly definitely we are on a higher high. The only thing is that for the momentum to break the previous high, you need some sort of a narrative, you need some sort of a fundamental push. The fundamental push comes from these earnings announcement and the growth of the company. So ideally the stock comes down, fills the gap before the earnings, and then it gives you the momentum. Because the problem is if the stock keeps running, this gap becomes very, very big, and uh, another slowdown in the market is going to pull the stock back. So if you are going to add at this position, I would say, you know, have a starter position, but don't go all in at these levels.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the extended move we've had recently. Um, Always a tricky one to get into, but this is the entire price action for Snowflake on the screen. So, yeah, not quite all time highs as we've mentioned, but might as well be given the amount of time that's been since it's
Yeah.
been in that sort of range. Okay, let's move on to the next stop then. So, Datadog.
Yeah. So similar, part of the AI stack on the application. I mean, this stock
We,
also has been doing.
we spoke about this stock a few times, didn't we? Back down here, and it seems to have kind of exploded. Did you get in on that? Okay.
No, as
Or,
usual,
no. Yeah, we missed that one together. I don't really trade these sorts of stocks, to be fair, and I respect completely people trading them, but yeah, it's not really my thing.
Yeah, it's the problem is that, you know if I'm looking at the entire AI stack, right? I don't want to get into the one layer with everything, right? If I want to spread out my diversify the AI stack, I have to be in the chips and the memory and this and that. So I don't want to be in all the SaaS names. Granted, I am in some of the names. Like ServiceNow, I am. Snowflake, it was my 2025 pick of the year, which did pretty well. I think I still made like 30 something percent on that. Uh, Datadog was not in there, and honestly, Datadog has a similar chart as Snowflake. If you look at the daily, it also has the same gap, and
Yeah,
they report earnings. Let's see, they report earnings on 8/6, so that is actually in 2 weeks, 3 weeks time frame. They also have a 37 analyst 7 rating. So I think the key is next 2 weeks, this week and next week, you'll have the Mag 7 report earnings, right? So you have to see how the hyperscalers are talking about the AI capex. And depending upon that, that's going to impact the AI market or the general names around AI. So again, I mean, honestly, SaaS did show some recoveries last quarter, especially with names like Snowflake and Datadog, but it's not out of the woods yet. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pulled down after the earnings.
yeah. And if it does get pulled down, I've put a little scenario here as Kay was talking there. If we come back down, it's a minus 22% down to the most, I would say, obvious kind of support resistance line, which is this previous resistance back in November 2021, of course, November 2025 as well. So a bit of a 4 year gap there. But two very sharp turning points in the stock's previous price action. So coming back down to that level will be very, very interesting. I'm going to mark out a little circle there just so people can see that sort of area a bit more. 199, that is actually on the price range sort of thing. So yeah, 22% down. Just patience is needed for things like this. If it does come down to these levels, Kay, would you be interested? And what would be your kind of strategy towards that potential trade?
So I think the issue is again the 200-day, 300-day SMA is right at the bottom of that gap fill.
Right. Oh, down here
So
somewhere.
it's down there. So it's not like I'm waiting for that to happen, but if the market gets weaker and we start to see some sort of like a weakness in the stock, I would probably target those major moving averages for an entry. But again, but I have to choose between Snowflake and Datadog. So between if I have to choose, I will choose Snowflake.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. We'll move on to CBRS then.
Mhm.
And what we'll do after this, we don't get any second requests. What we'll do is we'll bring up a couple of our favorites, maybe Rivian, maybe
Yeah,
Neo,
yeah.
maybe Tesla.
How about
Yeah,
SpaceX?
SpaceX. Let's do that. Yeah, lots of price action to go on that. Let's go to the daily because that doesn't make much sense. So, what do you say this stock does, Kay?
So CBRX, let me see, CBRS. Sorry, they are they're an artificial intelligence infrastructure company. They design, manufacture an AI compute platform that comprises of proprietary system and software that is delivered in racks for deployment in data centers, semiconductor industry. Okay. So
AI then.
couple so some interesting data points is their last earnings. They produced 191 million in revenue. They are still not a profitable company. What earnings? Did they IPO recently? Yeah, they did IPO recently. Yes.
Yeah, this is all the price action we have. This is the daily chart.
Okay.
So they came on the market on the 14th of May. I'm not going to do any analysis on this because there's no point. I look for at least 6 months worth, and that's not for a long, long time. Not until November, of course. But yeah, I mean, if you like this sort of stock, there's no harm in having a very small amount of exposure to it in your portfolio. I would go no more than 0.5, maybe 1% of the portfolio, in my personal opinion. Obviously, it's not advice; it's just what my kind of thesis is towards my own portfolio. But yeah, I mean, these sorts of names they can jump up 20, 30% in a day in this type of market, given the kind of industry it's in. You can even see on Friday actually it's down 4%, and the actual candle itself looks very, very minimal. If anything, it actually looks like it's kind of breaking down. I didn't see that actually at first, but you've got a bit of a trend line here that's kind of breaking down below that. So if anything, I do see us kind of making a lower move, maybe below 160 onwards. So
I mean, if you
yeah,
want to be a little
trade
bit
with
more,
caution.
yeah, you can look at a 4 hour, you can look at a 1 hour, you still fit it in the screen. And Sean is spot on the trend break. Um,
Yes, this is the 4 hour chart, as Kay suggested there. Not only do we have the trend line breakdown here, but we've actually got a bit of resistance a few times actually
mhm.
on what I imagine is probably the 50 moving average kind of flowing through the screen now for the 4 hour. So maybe that might be something to look forward to as well for the future. If we come back up above this trend line, come back above this 50 moving average, come back down and retest that sort of area, wherever that may be at the time, that could be a good kind of successful point in the short term for a stock like this, because that's what the stock is kind of basing its movement on. At least that's how I look at kind of stocks. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, but
So
interesting name actually. I've got to put it down on my list. Why not? Kind of keep tabs on that over the next 2 to 3 months. Let's put that down there. Cool.
all right,
Okay, what name would you like to see first?
let's go SpaceX.
SpaceX. Let's do it. Switch back to the daily chart for now. It's going down.
Yeah. Are you
Rockets are supposed to
surprised?
go up, aren't they?
Are you surprised? Well, I did make 60% on my IPO.
Same. Oh, not 60. I think I made 40s. I got it on about 160, something like that, and obviously sold it. I didn't sell up here.
Yeah.
That'd be
I
genius. But I
think it
think I
ran
sold it back
when
down
it was
here.
225. I sold at 213 because I did place
Nice.
an
Yeah.
order and it got fulfilled at 213. So, I will tell you this. I knew how this is going to play out, but when it was touching 225, and I was like, should I wait to
Classic. Yeah.
classic, right?
Yeah.
But then I thought to myself, I'm like, dude, you're not going to become a millionaire by holding what I had 8 shares,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So just take the
Just take
win.
the profit,
Just
run
take the
away,
win
buy
and
yourself a
move on.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just take the win. So I did. And I made like what, 600, 700, 800, something like that I made on that. Whatever, you can do the math. I got the IPO price, whatever that was, and then I sold it to 213. So
So,
I think,
okay,
yeah.
my question to you is: are you, one, interested in SpaceX at all within your portfolio, and two, what price appeals to you just from a natural instinct point of view?
So I will tell you this personally. I think I'm only interested in SpaceX from a trading standpoint. I'm not interested in SpaceX from a long-term portfolio standpoint. And I'll
Okay,
tell you
that's
why.
interesting. Yeah.
Both Tesla and SpaceX. I mean, Elon Musk is great, all that stuff, but dude, your company does not produce enough revenue for me to keep you in long-term portfolio. And I'll be very brutally honest. But I will keep you in my trading portfolio every single day. And I will trade in and out, in and out. And the reason is because I'm an option seller primarily. And because his company stocks are so retail friendly and there's just so much buzz around it, there's just the IV is always high, it gives me juicy premium, so they are perfect for trading.
Mm.
And I do have a long-term position in Tesla, but after holding it for 6 7 years now, I'm still up only, it goes up to 100%, then comes down to 60%, and then I'm like, all my other long-term positions I am up like 500, 900, 1000%, and then this stock in the last 7 years has been just like dragging his feet. So that's my personal opinion. I know people have become multimillionaires with holding Tesla, but they were like way before the curve. People got into Tesla, right? I'm not an early investor in Tesla. I got into Tesla when the Tesla already had run up, but I made decent amount of money on Tesla. But I make a
No,
lot of
good.
money on Tesla through option selling.
I think my thoughts on SpaceX are fairly similar, but more towards maybe waiting. So obviously, trading it sounds very appealing, but for me, I mean, I've said it before on today's show, waiting at least 6 months before
Yeah.
any sort of price action for a new IPO
Dude,
within the
I
market.
I think I'm not interested in selling anything until it's like in the below 100 first. First it needs to break the 100 barrier, and then I want to see where the price is, because I mean the amount of revenue that they make. I mean the promises are great, right? I mean the promise was the you will have robotaxi, 500,000 robotaxi in the entire world, or in the United States. Is still in like 5 cities. I
Yeah,
mean, until I see a robotaxi with my own eye driving in my neighborhood, I'm not going to believe it, right? And that's just how I invest. Whether it's right, maybe you don't agree with my investment style, and that's okay. Everybody has their own way, because at the end of this, my own money. I want to put it where my mouth is, right? I see Rivian, so I'm going to invest in Rivian, right? Because I see a bigger scale. And because the problem is the stocks like SpaceX and Tesla is so retail heavy, and so much narrative was already in there. The problem is that you're not early,
yeah,
right? You're paying,
you'd miss that for sure.
yeah, you're paying for the marketing, right? And the problem is I don't want to pay for the marketing.
Yeah, you want to be early.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to maybe the last stock of those, just to cover Rivian. I know we both like Rivian. You've spoken about it quite a few times the last few months, and I'm a big kind of advocate of the product itself. Really, I've never driven one, but
I mean,
in
I have
terms
not
of
driven
the
one
feedback it
either.
gets,
The demo drive is still not available, so I haven't driven Rivian
yeah.
either. I mean,
But in
but
terms of
I
the
have driven
feedback and the
Tesla. Tesla is
technology,
amazing. I mean, I'll tell you this: Tesla as a car, phenomenal.
so Rivian. Then, do you want to kick off with a bit of that kind of narrative, or should I start with the chart, or a bit of
Well, I mean,
what do
I
you
don't
reckon?
know, if people, everybody follows Rivian, but we can kind of give a little bit of a preview of what is happening. So the main Rivian story, the thesis behind Rivian is very simple. I have written about it as well, so you can follow it on. It's a pinned comment on my X profile. You can go and read the thesis if you want. But in general, it's a Model Y moment for Rivian. If there are two, at least from the initial launch feedback, looks like it is going to be a Model Y moment for them. Now, keep that in context. Yes, now you talk to Rivian bulls, everything is all great and everything, but the problem is the general market for EV, is kind of on a decline, even though the Rivian market was up. That's one. Number two, inflation, layoffs, all those things will play a role. But apart from all that, which Rivian unfortunately cannot control, they have launched this R2 version, which is the mass market SUV, mid-size SUV, which is the most popular category of the car, in United States, and that also opens up European market, because Cybertruck, I think the issue with Cybertruck was one of the issue was that they are such a big vehicle for European market that the European streets are not as wide as the US streets. For folks who travel to Europe,
Yeah,
cars are much smaller, and most part of the world, even if you go to Asia, Japan, China, all those. I mean, the lanes are not as wider as in the United States. So you have these big, heavy GMC Ford Raptors, driving through the town. It doesn't exist there.
it doesn't exist. Yeah, no.
So R2 gives you an opportunity for that market, just like Model Y is all over Europe. Like if you are in Norway, if you have, I know you have been to Norway many times, but if viewers
Yeah,
have
I
been in
mean, even
Norway, it's captured by Tesla.
yeah.
Tesla everywhere.
I mean, where I live here in the UK, they're all over the place. Tesla Y models, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Like when I was in London a couple of years, when we met, so the hotel where I was staying, I forget where was I staying. I totally forgot. But anyways, there was just so many Teslas over there. Crazy. Model 3 was all over the place. And I think Rivian, whenever they get a chance, I think it's probably going to become, a decent competition, if not. And I'm not saying it's going to be a Tesla killer. I don't think it should be a Tesla killer. Tesla deserves its
yeah.
spot for a reason. Tesla really brought EV to everybody, and that you have to give it to Tesla.
it's definitely on its own path, for sure. And I think the product is obviously similar in a way, but obviously it's a lot different. I think tailored to maybe a slightly different customer. But going to the chart, I think the last couple of months, almost 3 months to be fair, basically from this point here, from May, middle of May, it's been a real battle. It really has. This is just a weekly chart. If you go into the daily chart, it's even worse. Not worse, but more intense, should we say? But this
It is very
last
tense,
two
yeah.
to 3 months has been an absolute battle to just kind of climb and push and battle the way through these moving averages. So this is the 50 and the 200 on the weekly chart, and we've just in the last few weeks kind of pushed out of that, come back down and retested it. And last week was a bit of a doji candle, so perhaps the momentum is actually changing. What I would really like to see is a push up to the top of this trend line, which we saw actually end of last year, which has been nice to see on the kind of positive change with the kind of thesis and things like that. But I still stick by my kind of 30 to 40. I did say this year, but we're running out of months, Kay. But I still think we do see 30 to 40, maybe on the turn of the year, perhaps. Like I said, I don't think it will stay there. I just think it will get there, and I think it will come back to down 20,
Yeah.
2025 area. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, that's just generally how stocks move, of course. You can see it here. Nice move from about, what was that, 13 to kind of 22, and then all the way back down to kind of 15. I think that's completely normal with stocks like this. But yeah, as long as the kind of story and the momentum kind of flows through, and the customer feedback and satisfaction, and obviously the ramping forward with the R2 model itself, all goes to plan. Obviously these things are easier said than done, but if it all goes to plan, there's no reason why this within stock um, kind of moves up with that narrative. But yeah, it's been been a really tough few months as a Rivian holder. It's been emotional, of course. You see the charts, you think, oh, maybe I should sell this, maybe I should wait for a lower price. But that's just your head getting into your own head. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
Um,
when
yeah.
we mentioned that it's a Model Y moment for Rivian, keep in mind Tesla went through this entire. Tesla was like in this same situation. They were going up, down, up, down, up, down before people got rewarded. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that you will get rewarded on Rivian just like you got in Tesla. Tesla, I mean, I don't see Rivian becoming a $1 trillion company, right? I'm not pretending to be. But if they are delivering on every single promise, to the shareholder, all I care about is the stock reflecting the sentiment is reflected as per the strength of the company, right? First of all, the biggest thing for Rivian is coming to profitability, and I'm telling you, if they are able to achieve that, a lot of folks will have a FOMO on this stock.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. That's just how it works for these stocks. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
I mean, but see, we have been talking Rivian when Rivian was in $8 and $9. So a lot of us are already up on our positions. So we are talking from different. But if you want to get into this position, I think every time, if first of all, I think you need to be 100% sure that this is going to be a long drawn battle. This is not going to be that, hey, next quarter we are going to see a 10% increase in the stock. You could actually drag for a couple quarters before you see any results.
yeah, exactly. Okay, I think it's a good discussion on Rivian. Obviously, I think I've really enjoyed today, actually, coming back after probably about 4 or 5 weeks off.
Dude, that was
Comes to the
great.
top of the hour. Obviously, not many people popping in. That makes complete sense. We've been off for a while, on 2 hours earlier than normal. And obviously, people are probably gearing up for the World Cup finals, and obviously doing what they do on Sundays. That's fair enough. But if you are watching this in the post production and you've got this far, then thank you very, very much for watching. We appreciate your support. Of course, we'll be on next week, normal time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, back to normal. And we'll be following the charts and giving our perspectives and thoughts and feelings, that sort of thing. Kay, do you want to send us out for the week?
Well, I'm gonna wish that I win or we win, But regardless of
Ooh,
the fact, and I think, but what we want is we want this game to be, exciting. Let's
fun.
put it this way.
Yeah.
That we will agree on.
And we want it to be fair as well.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
this should be the World Cup final game, right? And it should live up to that name. That's all I care about.
Yeah, awesome. Missed you too as well, man. Yeah, it's good to be back. We really appreciate the support. Obviously, there's lots of other people that do tune in week after week as well. And we're looking forward to having them back in the hot seat. Thank you again for Wolflet as your platform. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys next week. Trade safe.